The thing about prophetic dreams is that when I'm predicting something when I'm awake, it's more of a psychic prediction based on information that I'm collecting as it's starting to enter into my consciousness. And I'm getting all of these informational cues. I'm pulling it together and coming up with my best guess of what I think is going to happen. That's a prediction. And that's what most of us psychics do. We predict the future based on what we're sensing. I'm just really good at doing that.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Spotlight Houston, where we bring you the best people, places, and events in Greater Houston. Kicking off 2025, we're joined by psychic medium and teacher Fernando Marron. He shares his predictions for the year ahead, from political shifts to global changes. Plus, Fernando reveals how we can all tap into our own intuition. This is episode 119, with an original air date of Monday, January 6, 2025. Please note, this episode has been edited for time. An extended version is being posted to our YouTube channel. Spotlight Houston is brought to you by Story Zone Media. And now, here's your host, Blanca Quezada.
Like every year, I always begin to wonder what's going to happen these next 12 months, right? What can we expect? There's the hope that wars will end, that the new medical discoveries will be made, and just so that people don't suffer anymore and little kids don't suffer and all these awful things that happen throughout the years. I'm just hoping that this new year is going to be totally different, more positive, and that we're actually going to live in a better world. And I may be wrong. I probably am, but I'm just dreaming and hoping. So I've invited my friend, Fernando Marron. He's a psychic and medium, as well as an amazing teacher. He's going to let us know what we can expect to happen globally with the economy, scientifically, and so much more. Predictions are something that a lot of us are really curious about all the time. He's here to set us straight. Fernando, it's great to have you here. Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share all that I'm been picking up on, and also just to talk about the things that is on everybody's mind.
This time of year, you're very busy, so I'm very grateful you're here. You're talking to a lot of clients who are wanting to know what exciting things that may be coming up for them personally, right?
Mhm.
So thank you again for your time. Before we discuss some of the upcoming predictions, let's talk about you. I want to talk
Mhm.
about you.
Sure.
How did you know that you had this prophetic ability?
Mhm. Yeah. When it comes to my psychic ability and my ability to prophesize the future, it depends on how you look at it. But when I was younger, I had these experiences as a child that I have no recollection of. If you ask my mom and my cousin, who spent a lot of time around me, they have stories of me talking to people who weren't there, talking to usually a man in my aunt's queen Anne chair, and I would just sit there and talk as if I was listening and conversing with someone. And I had imaginary friends. I don't remember any of that. I was so young. But fast forward in my teenage years, I became really interested in our ability to use our brains to their full capacity. And I used to watch shows like Star Trek that kind of opened up my mind and got me thinking about things. And it wasn't until I had an experience where I heard a voice that warned me of an upcoming fire and prepared me with how to deal with that when it happened. It wasn't until that occurred and I was saved in that instance, from dying, actually, that it kind of rocked my world and got me to completely open up to the potential of not only the human mind, but also our potential as human beings, what we could do, what we could sense, what we were capable of. And after that, it's been an ongoing search and exploration of those abilities, and also in teaching others how to use their abilities.
Yeah. Well, I've always heard you talking about the mind that we only use part of our brains,
Hmm.
basically. And
Hmm.
there's a lot that we don't know and that we don't know how to use.
Yeah. Yeah. Most people go through their everyday experiences thinking about the things that occupy their focus, whether it's family, relationships or love, finances, their work, how to deal with people, how to get through their own immediate problems. Most people are just focused on those things. And that's a very, even though I wouldn't say that having family or having people in your life that you care about and that you think about is a superficial thing, but for the most part, it is a superficial thought process. It's
Yeah.
us focusing on the physical, tangent things in life. When we are going into our intuition, what we're doing is we're kind of letting go of the focus of that part of our life, and we're allowing ourselves to go a little deeper. And if we just get a little bit more introspective and a little deeper in our thought process and just become aware, and you can do that through meditation, you can do that through exercises that are designed to help you to kind of be present and in the moment, through art, through cooking. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do daily that have kind of like a hypnotic effect on our mind. Even washing dishes, you kind of go into a trance state. Taking a shower, you go into a trance state. That allows for intuition to kind of kick in. And what we start to pick up on are on the energies that are interacting with our mind. It's all data, it's all information. We settle into that further and we focus on tuning in to things that we want or desire to know. And we do it from that perspective, from that place. If we practice that over time, we can really develop our psychic abilities. And then what will happen is all of our capacity for awareness on all levels begins to be accessed, including
Mhm.
prophecy, prophetic dreams, which is what I seem to have developed as well over time.
Mhm.
So it's something that takes time, dedication, and practice, and also a true understanding, because people who are having these experiences and have never had them before it can be very frightening for them. It can be very
Right.
confusing for them.
Right. So how is it that, I mean, I would think that would be something more personal. So how is it that you can relate to other people's lives?
hmm Yeah, we all are human beings. We all have human experiences. It doesn't matter whether you were born in one part of the world or the other. When it comes to the experience of love, we all can relate to that in some way, shape, or form. When it comes to the experience of fear or loss, mourning, those are all human experiences. So when I'm communicating with, when I'm talking to a client and I'm connecting with information, what I'm doing is I'm using my life's experiences to help me understand more specifically and intellectually what it is that I'm picking up on energetically, because it's an energy to the future. The future, from our perspective in the moment, the future is still coalescing, is still coming into fruition. All
Mhm.
futures already exist because there are alternate universes, there are alternate dimensions. But the one that we are headed towards is still coalescing based on what is happening in this precise moment. So when I'm tuning in to the future, I'm trying to understand it from the perspective of my experience, from my background, from the stories that I've heard from other people, other clients, from things I've read, shows, TV. And so as I tune in, my mind is tuning into energy, and that energy is relative to the experience that I've had. So my mind will use memories and things that I can associate with to explain that to me. I've just
Mhm.
gotten really good at paying attention and understanding that breakdown of communication, understanding how my mind is using those references to help me gauge the information and what it
Mhm.
represents, what it means.
Mhm. I think you mentioned the magic word. We're all energy. We
hmm
forget that. We forget that
hmm
we are energy. And so that's something that we don't think about or use or know how to use, period.
hmm
And we could be probably doing so much more if we knew how. That's why
Yeah.
you're a great teacher.
Well, that's why I teach. I believe that if we just allow ourselves to be more open, more receptive, more aware, and we connect with each other, we wouldn't try to hurt each other. You know,
Right.
to this day, causing someone physical pain or harm, watching violence on television or seeing someone suffering is so difficult for me. It's
Yeah.
torture. It's absolute torture to me. And
Yeah.
so, and that's because I'm more open emotionally. I'm more empathic in that way. And I'm more sensitive to not only my own energetic experience, but the experience of other people. If we all had that same capacity, I don't think we'd be trying to blow each other up. I don't think
I
that we would
agree.
allow beliefs, cult mentality, ideologies that are outdated to separate us, to cause us to turn on each other, when the obvious is that we're all human. We all feel suffering and pain. We all have the capacity for joy. Why not help each other to feel joy, to feel
Right.
safety, to feel love instead of pain and suffering?
Right. Well, what you just mentioned is something that everybody should sit back and think about. But so, why is it so difficult sometimes for people to understand your unique gift and they see it as something evil?
Mm. A lot of that, I believe, has to do with religion and faith. I think that over time, when in positions of authority or control, realize that in order to be able to control the circumstances that kept them safe, because ultimately people feel safe if they control the circumstances that they're dealing with. So if they focus on control, then they aren't willing to go with the flow. They aren't willing to be present. They aren't willing to respect and honor each individual and that person's experience. So when you have groups of people over time building beliefs and creating narratives and stories about God or about the source, and they put themselves in positions of control and power of that information, that gives them a lot of ability to be able to direct the narrative of the future and what's to come. It gives them a sense of safety. So people like myself who can understand things not always from seeing it directly, but from feeling it, from sensing it, from having visions of the future, we are something that can't be controlled. We are doing something that they don't have any ability to stop. Because of that, we're a threat.
Right.
We're a threat to the bigger picture. We're a threat to the narrative. When someone is talking to you and you're just like, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
Something's off there. Even if you don't have anything in front of you that is validating what you're feeling, what you're sensing, there's still something operating within you. That part of you is the part of you that is connected directly to source, directly to all other beings in physical form, to all energetic mechanisms that exist in reality and in creation. And that part of our experience is very frightening, because those people who want to have power, want to control the narrative, want to be safe and to hoard resources, they don't want any outliers. They want everybody to fall in line, get in place. So a long time ago, and it wasn't just one religious belief, even though I come from a background of Christianity and Catholicism, all of them began to make it clear that having these abilities or using these abilities was bad, was wrong, was evil, was not acceptable. And from my perspective, I'm like, well, I was born with these abilities. Are you saying that the universe creation, God made a mistake? And there are a lot of us like me who are having the same experience. And a bulk of us are not mass murderers. A bulk of us are not out to hurt others. Quite the opposite. We don't want to hurt people. We feel very sensitive to causing pain in the world. Track record, my species, my energetic species, is not the problem, but we are a factor that has to be controlled or squashed because we are a threat to those in power.
Yeah. I think we fear what we don't understand and what we
Yeah.
don't know, what we can't see. So, yeah. But
And all the churches make money off of people coming to worship in their houses, and they don't maintain that source of income without people coming to them. And they've people in the church have placed themselves in positions as representatives of God. We don't need representatives to source or to God, because we are the closest thing to our source, to God.
Mhm.
So we don't need someone to stand before us to act as a bridge. We are directly connected, each and every one of us, not only to source and to God, to creation, but to each other. And the minute that people realize that, they can start to gain that sense of empowerment for themselves, and they can start to break away some of these old ideologies and belief systems that have honestly failed us time and time again for thousands of years.
Yeah. When people find out that you're a psychic or a medium, do you have some people that don't want to be near you because they probably think you're thinking about what they're thinking about?
I used to. I think when I lived in Texas and in Houston, I encountered a lot of people who did not understand this or didn't have a clear idea of what this was. And they'd watch TV or movies, or they'd heard some story, and a lot of it was fiction or hyped up narratives. They didn't understand it. And so I ran into that a lot more in Houston when I lived in Texas. But again, it's been 6, 7 years now since I lived in Houston. I've noticed over the years, every time I go back, that's changing. People are waking
Yeah.
up. People are starting to consider that maybe there's more to this than anything else. Where I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico currently, and even in Portland, that where I travel to often now, I run into a lot of people who are part of the same tribe as me. They have open minds. They are very progressive in their thinking. They are spiritual in nature. They practice their own personal religion, which is their own connection to the divinity. And it's nice to see that. So I don't really run into that as often as I used
Yeah.
to.
Again, it's what people don't understand.
Yeah.
So they feel like maybe you're reading their mind or something,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it gets scary.
Hmm.
But through your gifts, you've been able to help a lot of people. So, is there a possibility that you can share a story with us that you were able to provide that support or information that a person needed to make a difference in their life?
One that stands out the most and has stood out the most for me for years is, and there's been other stories since then, but I think I know this person well and have gotten to know them well since then. But I once did a reading for a woman who was also a psychic, and she'd been doing this for years and was a friend of mine, and, well, became a friend of mine over time, but remembered doing a reading for her. And it was one of my very first readings to really do it in this way and in this style. And what I mentioned to her is I said, I want you to be careful with your heart, because I keep seeing it's almost like there's a restriction, and I keep seeing something that looks like a stent. She says, are you sure you're not talking about my son? Because my son just had a stent put in. And I said, no, I'm specifically asking about your health. And I'm seeing something that is going on with your heart and the need for a stent. So, what I would say is, if you're not aware of anything at the moment, no need to worry. But if you start to feel pain or pressure in your chest, go to the hospital. And really don't question it. Don't doubt it. Just go to the hospital, because I feel like it's something pretty serious. Well, I was the first time I had met her. A few months later, I went back to see her, and she said, Fernando, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. I'm like, okay, what? She says, you saved my life. And I said, what do you mean? She said,
Wow.
a couple of months ago, I was having pressure in my chest, and I was having what I thought was heartburn. And I kept thinking maybe it's indigestion. I was taking antacids and everything, and it wasn't getting better. And I was just feeling this just burning sensation. And it had gone on for a few hours. And I just remembered your voice in my mind and you saying, if you have pain in your chest or with your heart, go to the hospital. Don't wait. Go to the hospital. And so I heard your voice in my mind, and I remembered what you said, and I went to the hospital.
Mhm.
And the doctor said, we are so glad you came in, because you probably wouldn't have survived the night. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, your artery is 98% clogged, and you were on the verge of a heart attack. So they had to do a procedure, and they put in a stent. And so, sure enough, she came through that, and she's fine. So she said, had she not gone to the hospital because of the memory of me telling her, go to the hospital if your heart hurts, she said the doctor said she would have made it to the night. So not just changing someone's life, but also saving their life. It's been able to do
Yeah.
that.
You talked to probably to a lot of clients that don't get back to you and tell you, hey, what you told me changed my life, right?
Mhm. I do. I am not, I don't set myself up to where I need to be validated constantly because in the early stage of my career, I was looking for a lot of validation and it was harder for me and it slowed me down because unless someone was acknowledging what I was saying, I was getting blocked by myself because I needed the validation. So I made a decision that I was not going to wait for someone to validate what I was saying. Not only that, but a lot of times there were situations happening where I would sense something, I would share it, and the client could not understand what I was talking about, or they didn't agree with me, or in certain instances with mediumship, they could not relate that to the spirit. And I'm like, nope, like I'm seeing this. And so I was struggling with maintaining the cohesion of my messaging. And people would come back afterwards and say, Fernie, you said such and such. It turned out you were right. I didn't know this, or I looked into this, or this happened the day after you said it. And I thought that was not possible. So after I started hearing more and more people coming back and telling me that what I was sharing with them was valid, I decided I was not going to wait for validation and I was just going to stick to what I got and what I felt. And if I was wrong in time, let that be proven. But if not, it is what it is. And that has actually improved my readings and caused me to become more accurate. Because if I'm just dead set on something and I'm just like, nope, I'm like a dog with a bone. Nope. And they're like, and even on social media, when I do live events and I'm doing readings, it doesn't make for looking good on camera when you have hundreds of people watching you do a reading
Right.
and the person's like, no, no. And I'm like, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm seeing. No, it doesn't make me look good, but it doesn't matter because then I will hear from that person after the fact, and then
Yeah.
we'll upload the video with the update so people can see they were saying no, and they had no idea that this was the case.
Yeah.
So
Eventually they get it.
yes, they get it, or it happens and they didn't think it was possible. So there was one woman where I predicted that she was in a program to be a veterinarian assistant, I believe. And I told her that she was gonna end up going and becoming an FBI agent. She thought I was insane. She's like, that's not what I'm going to school for. Like, that's not what I'm doing in my background. And I'm like, I keep seeing you becoming an FBI
Oh,
agent.
wow.
Yeah, 3 years later, she did a reading with me again, and she said, "I just got through my first rounds of my of being an FBI agent." She said, "I didn't even think of what you said, but a friend of mine was a part of the agency and told me that they're recruiting, and I said, why not?" And
Wow.
so then she went over the reading that we did, the recording right before I did the second reading for her, and she said that's what she remembered what I said, and I was like, "Oh, well, there you go."
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. Wow. Well, let's get into predictions for
Hmm.
2025.
Yeah.
So, what do you see that coming for us in this new year
Hmm.
that's going to be positive or that we have to be aware of,
Hmm.
to be careful of?
Yeah, right now everyone's talking about the election and what happened and
Right.
where people stand with all of that. And I addressed that very publicly, right? I mean, I've been talking about this for a while. So the thing about prophetic dreams is that when I'm predicting something when I'm awake, it's more of a psychic prediction based on information that I'm collecting as it's starting to enter into my consciousness. And I'm getting all of these informational cues. I'm pulling it together and coming up with my best guess of what I think is going to happen. That's a prediction. And that's what most of us psychics do. We predict the future based on what we're sensing. I'm just really good at doing that. Some people are not. Some people will create a narrative or a story and then it just goes way off the handle. With a prophetic experience, like a prophetic dream, I'm not consciously choosing to sense about that situation. It's something that is occurring that is affecting enough people that those of us who are sensitive to energy will start to dream about it before it happens. And what I've realized over several years of this happening to me is that whenever it's a prophetic dream, it's something that affects the masses. And usually I'm experiencing it from someone else's perspective, not my own, because I'm not in the situation. started having prophetic dreams in 2018, I believe. 2018 or 2019. And I started sharing those online on social media. They're still all up. I've not removed them and whenever something comes to pass, I just let people know, hey, this is what's happening. This is what I predicted. And usually when I have a prophetic dream, I will share the dream, the details of the dream. Then I'll give my prediction of what I think is going to happen based on the elements of the dream. Because a prophetic dream is interesting. It's like my mind is moving forward in time and it's taking a snapshot of time. And in that moment in time, several things are happening simultaneously within a very short period of time within each other, from each other. And so my brain will take all of those pieces, mash it together, and create a dream about it. And so I've gotten smart enough to where now when I have a prophetic dream, I will realize I wake up knowing that it's a prophetic dream and I start to write it down. I share it and then I break it apart and try to explain to people what I think it represents, what I think it means. So in 2019, March of 2019, it was one of my first prophetic dreams where I predicted that Donald Trump would be at the White House. It seemed like he had lost his position of power and he wasn't no longer in control of the US. And there were military Marines next to him with assault rifles. His own clan or people were off to the side waiting for him to give them directions. And all of these pieces, masses of people were descending on him. And they were all people of color. And they were like, you're out. Like, you're out. We're done with you. You're not good for us. You're dangerous. You're out. And so he had directed the Marines to shoot at the crowd. And the Marines looked at each other like, those are American citizens. Like, we can't. So they didn't shoot. He took one of the guns from the Marines. He pointed it at himself and started shooting the gun himself, and also started getting his own clan to come in and to start acting on his behalf. And there was this shooting and violence. I mean, everywhere. So it was a really interesting dream. And so the morning of that dream, I woke up. I was a little cautious in sharing it because back then I was really diplomatic with the way I shared those kinds of details.
Mhm.
We didn't have as much of a highly charged and racial environment like we do today. I shared it in a very cautious way, but I shared the details of the dream. And then I shared what I thought it meant. I said, around the time of the inauguration or after the election, there would be some sort of assault or attack on one of the Capitol buildings. There would be gunfire, there would be violence, and Donald Trump would be the source or the cause of it. That's pretty much what I said. And we had the insurrection happen and January 6th. And so we know where that went.
Yeah.
And I said that in March of 2019. That happened in January of 2020. So it was a big shift. So whenever I have a dream like that, I've had a dream about every election since Hillary. I did predict that I didn't think she would win. I just didn't think he would win. I didn't think we were enough to do, but I predicted that she would not win because her character would be assassinated. Of course, she didn't win. Then we had the election with Biden. I didn't have a dream that he won, but I had a dream that Donald Trump lost. So by default, I'm like, well, if he lost, then Biden won. So when the election happened, I predicted well in advance that Biden would win the election. That's what happened. Then 2 years ago from today, 2 years ago, I had another dream. And in this dream, it was winter. There was snow on the ground. Some of it was melting. Everyone was applauding Biden. Job well done. Job well done. And then he clutched his chest. He put his hand on the wall. He looked down, and then he collapsed. And the Secret Service people moved in to help him. It looked like the president had died. As that happened, then I see an image of Kamala with her hand raised and the other hand on a book, taking the oath of presidency. Then I woke up. And I was like, okay. So I predicted 2 years ago, posted it on Instagram and on social media, that Kamala would be the next president of the United States. And because I saw her taking the oath of office, I believed that she would win the election. I described the circumstances around it all. Now, here we are. We're in December, about to start into January. Based on what has happened, did not win the election and Trump is going back into office.
Mhm.
Really weird about it all because to me, none of this makes sense. And even up until the day of the election, and it wasn't even the first thing on my mind because I was dealing with family drama that was going on. So my mind wasn't even on the election. But even when I was seeing the news and everything, people were like, "It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good." And I'm like, no, I know what I dreamt, and this is the third dream in a row. I'm pretty sure she's going to be the next president. And not only that, but I try to correlate what I'm sensing with people's readings to what I'm getting in prophetic dreams as well. So if I'm having dreams where people are having the opportunity to buy their first home because the government is subsidizing the cost of their down payment, that does not match up to something Donald Trump would do. But it was one of Kamala Harris's policies that she put out there that she wanted to offer $25,000 to first home buyers. And I had been saying that for the year prior, that this would be offered, that this would be offered. And so a lot of things that I was sensing about the future for people and my regular clients a year before started to match up to the policies that she was talking about, that she was wanting to put into place, things that were being offered through her campaign. That was like, okay, I've got all of those pieces that are lining up with a specific future. I've got my prophetic dream that's lining up with a specific future. And not only that, I also made another prediction before the election that we would find out that there would be a very complicated plot to steal the election, and that this was going to be way more intricate than what happened in January 6th. Trump tried to get all of his people to do it for him, everyday people, average person. They show up to the Capitol and break into the Capitol building. That was his goal. That didn't work for him because those are not professional government takeover people. So what I said was that this time around, it would be people who were in all areas of government and within companies, big corporations, and that there would be concerted effort to try to coordinate and to try to take the election. And that we would not find out about it right away, that we would find out about it after the election or a while after the election. So I predicted that. I also predicted that he would not survive into 2025, and that I actually saw him passing away somehow around an airplane event because I kept seeing an airplane. I'm like, why am I seeing an airplane? And I was like, is someone else going to shoot him down? Is Iran going to shoot him down? Or something? I didn't know what was going on with that, but I kept seeing that. And I wasn't sure how all those pieces were going to come about, but I kept seeing these pieces. And I also kept seeing Mike Johnson on the television telling people, we don't stand for this. This is not our party. We don't stand by this kind of behavior. This is not the beliefs and the core position of our party. And I saw all these things. And so then when he supposedly won and she lost, and I woke up the next morning and I woke up to a voice, which is interesting. It's the voice that I've heard only 3 times in my life. And it was the same voice that warned me about the fire. And I woke up to this voice and it said, on Pennsylvania. And I said, okay. And so when I woke up and I looked at the news, it was a complete contradiction to everything that I had sensed and also what I had woken up to. And I said, this is so weird. What is going on? And so I was just in a weird, confused place because for the first time ever, I was very confused about why this was the reality. It didn't match up to what I'd sensed. And it also, something felt so off to me about this. I'm like, something's off. Something's weird. Something's wrong. And so I sat with that for a little bit. A few days go by. I'm avoiding TV. I'm avoiding the news. I'm avoiding my friends. I'm avoiding social media. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get online. I'm going to see what everybody's saying. I got on about 3 days later. And what do you know? So many people in my community are saying the exact same thing. Something's off. I don't know what, but something doesn't smell right. Something feels really weird. And then data starts to come out. The data starts to look really weird. And so you think back to the people after Trump lost the last time, all of these people were like, no, it was a stolen election and yada, yada, yada. But there was no proof. There was no evidence. There was nothing tangible to use to validate that position. There are so many of us, not just people who are like me, who are sensitive, who have been saying that she would win from the get-go. I actually believe she did win the election by 7 to 10 million votes. I believe that some things happened that they are figuring out and that we're going to find out about and learn about in the next few
Yeah.
weeks. It's really interesting.
Fernando, I don't mean to
No.
cut you off because that's really interesting, but we're almost out of time. So can you like briefly tell us a little bit more that might be happening in 2025 for us?
Yeah. So I also believe what I think is going to happen. I think that this is probably Putin's on his last leg. I think that he's probably on his way out. I think that the people in power who control money in Russia are going to push him out or get him out of the picture. I also think that we're about to see Mexico go through this grand evolution of a country, and it's going to become one of these powerhouse countries. And you hear of countries like India that suddenly they start to grow really quickly, and they have all of these resources and money, and Mexico's about to go through the same thing. We're going to see kind of a reversal where people, instead of people wanting to come to the US because they see the US as people are going to want to go to Mexico because you're going to see Mexico and it's like, what is going on in Mexico? So I think that's another big thing that we're going to start to notice as well. I think that we're going to get a lot of confusing information about the UFO phenomenon that is happening right now. And there's a lot of different things that are occurring, different elements that are interacting with each other that is creating more confusion. Some of it is us and what we've reverse engineered and used in technology through our own government programs that are top secret. Some of it are amateurs who just have a lot of money and they are doing stuff in the sky just to kind of mess with people or just to do it for fun or attention. And then some of it is people or beings who are not from this world. And they're just trying to let us know, hey, we're around. And like, we don't need lights blinking for the FCC. We're energy, we're plasma. So it's different. And now we know that it exists. We know that they're using our oceans and that they're visiting us on a regular basis. I think we're about to have the biggest shift in human consciousness that we've needed to have in a long time. Several years ago, I was afraid that maybe too much had happened and humanity had not reached enough of a point of advancement to where we could get to our next big stage in evolution. I have a lot more hope today than I did a few years ago.
Oh, that's positive.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I think that we are going to start to realize that we really do need to be there for each other, and we need to support each other, help each other, and to start to dismantle the systems that have not helped us to survive or thrive, because surviving is no longer good enough. And so the big shift in consciousness is going to start with people just no longer wanting to work the regular jobs that are just out of desperation. I mean, it's gonna be a shift in the way the society works, the way that the businesses work, what we put our effort and energy towards. And so I think that we're about to go through an evolutionary stage in our consciousness and awakening in different ways. But it starts with just questioning the systems that keep us in place.
Yeah. Well, Fernando, are you going to have all your predictions on your website?
I am going to post a medium.com article within the next week or two. And then I'm also going to do a few videos for social media to kind of share those as well. So those will be available for people to see.
Oh, great. Because I'm sure you have a lot of them. And unfortunately, we're running out of time. So what is your website?
My website is fernandomarron.com, FernandoMarron.com.
And do you have a phone number where people can call, or if they want to schedule an appointment or anything like that with you?
If they call the number that I have associated with my business, it's just going to direct them to my site because everything's automated through the website. So that the best thing for them to do is just to go ahead and go to the website.
Okay, perfect. And thank you again for taking time from your very busy schedule. I'm very grateful for that. And also on your website, people can find information on your classes and workshops that you have as well, because we didn't get into that. We need to get into that next time.
Sure.
So
I also have a book. I also have a book coming out in the first quarter of 2024. It's my very first book, and it's basically how this works, how people can tap into their abilities and develop their own psychic
2024. You mean 2025?
Yes, the first quarter of 2025.
Like, hey, wait a minute. Okay. Well, I'm going to look for it. Will it be in all bookstores?
It should be available in all the major book, Barnes and Nobles, Amazon. Yeah.
And you got to make sure you have that on your website too.
Oh, absolutely.
Great. Like I said, thank you. And I'm grateful for your time. I always enjoy talking to you. Very interesting what you do, the unique gift that you have. I hope I get to talk to you again soon.
I'd love to come back.
Yeah. And thank you all as well for joining me today. And please don't forget to send me your comments and story ideas. Also, on behalf of myself and the show's producer, Sandra Fernandez, we wish you an amazing Happy New Year.